Welcome to Crossdressing Stories Untold, where hidden tales and untold experiences from the world of crossdressing come to life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a moment.
The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and fear the night I was born. My mother, Queen Isolde, a woman of ethereal beauty and a heart as vast as her kingdom, brought me into this world with both joy and a heavy premonition. I was born Lyra, a princess marked by a star-shaped birthmark upon my delicate shoulder, a celestial whisper on mortal flesh. The old seeress, her eyes like ancient, clouded moons, had delivered the prophecy weeks before. This child shall bring peace, or utter ruin. Words that now hung like a death shroud over the joyous celebration of my birth. My mother, ever resilient, had simply clutched my tiny hand tighter, vowing to protect me from any shadow that dared to touch my nascent light. But shadows, alas, are often closer than one imagines. Within the gilded halls of our own court, a traitor lurked, his ambition a poison seeping through the foundations of the kingdom. He coveted the throne, and a newborn princess, even one touched by prophecy, was merely an obstacle to be removed. On that fateful night, under a weeping moon, an assassin's blade sought my life. I remember nothing of the terror, only fragments like scattered stardust in the deepest corners of my subconscious. A flash of blinding magic, a guttural cry from my mother, and then the deep, resonant incantation of the royal sorcerer Arian. He was a man whose wisdom rivaled the stars, and his magic was as ancient as the mountains. His voice, strong and unwavering, echoed through the chamber. Moonveil, protect this innocent soul. Transform her form, shroud her truth. A blinding light, cool as moonlight, enveloped me. When it receded, I was no longer the Princess Lyra, but a babe transformed into a boy. My identity, my very essence, was rewritten by powerful magic. Not just my physical form, but the memories of all who knew me were subtly altered, twisted, as if a cosmic hand had gently erased a paragraph from the book of time. The queen mourned a stillborn son, the court whispered of tragedy, and no one, save Arian, remembered the star-marked princess. I was spirited away, a tiny, bewildered soul, to live among the common folk in the teeming slums, far from the gilded cage I was born to. They called me Aiden. The sounds of the palace, the scent of lavender and silk, were replaced by the cacophony of the marketplace and the earthy smell of the streets. Yet, even as I drifted into a new life, a faint lullaby seemed to echo on the wind, a ghostly whisper only I could almost hear. No matter who you are, the moonlight will find you. My mother's voice, a tender lament, forever searching. I grew up in the dusty, crowded alleyways of the slums, an orphan like many others, fending for myself, doing odd jobs to survive. Life was a relentless cycle of hunger, toil, and the constant struggle for a scrap of dignity. My days were spent mending nets for fishermen, hauling baskets for merchants, or delivering messages through the labyrinthine streets. Despite the hardships, I possessed a peculiar quality that often drew unwanted attention, a delicate, almost ethereal beauty. My features were finely chiseled, my movements graceful, and my eyes were said to shine like moonlight on a still pond. People would often pause, their gazes lingering, a strange curiosity mixed with an unnameable recognition. I attributed it to my unusual light hair, almost silver in the harsh sun, a stark contrast to the darker hues of the city dwellers. It made me feel conspicuous, an outsider even among outcasts. One sweltering afternoon, I was haggling over the price of stale bread in the bustling market when my world, already precarious, was thrown into utter chaos. A group of figures, cloaked and shadowed, moved with an unnerving efficiency through the crowd. These were the Crows, a whispered name, a symbol of rebellion that fueled both hope and terror in the hearts of the common folk. They were champions of the downtrodden, or so they claimed, fighting against the tyranny of the monarchy. I was clutching my meager purchase, trying to disappear into the anonymity of the crowd, when a rough hand seized my arm. I struggled, my heart hammering against my ribs, but the grip was unyielding. I was pulled into a shadowed alcove, my meager meal scattered. My captor, a tall woman with eyes as sharp as a falcon's, scrutinized me intently. Her gaze was unnerving, piercing, as if she could see directly into my soul. "Look at him," she rasped to her companions, her voice like gravel. "The resemblance is uncanny." Another man, his face scarred and grim, held up a tarnished locket. Inside, a faded, miniature painting depicted a young girl with the same light hair, the same delicate features, the same moonlit eyes as mine. It was a portrait of the lost princess, Lyra, from before she was taken. My stomach clenched. I had heard the whispers, the legends of the princess who vanished, but never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I had any connection to such royalty. "You," the woman said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "are going to be our princess." Fear, cold and stark, gripped me. My mind reeled. Princess? Me? A boy who had known nothing but dirt and struggle? This was madness. They explained their audacious plan. The monarchy was weak, the people restless. If they could present a lost princess, a symbol of hope and legitimacy, they could rally the common folk to their cause, legitimize their rebellion, and finally overthrow the corrupt regime. And I, with my uncanny resemblance, was to be their pawn. I protested, my voice cracking, but I'm a boy. I can't possibly. Silence, she snapped, her eyes narrowing. Magic can do many things. A mere disguise is simple enough. You will learn. You will become Lyra. The next few days were a blur of terror and confusion. I was stripped of my rough clothes, scrubbed clean until my skin felt raw, and then the unthinkable happened. They brought out silks and satins, dresses of such intricate beauty I had only ever glimpsed them on noblewomen from afar. My heart pounded with a mix of shame and utter bewilderment. "Put it on," the woman, who introduced herself as Maeve, commanded, her tone brooking no argument. With trembling hands, I donned the first gown. The fabric, soft and cool, brushed against my skin in a way I had never experienced. It was strange, alien. The layers of petticoats, the intricate lacework, the way the skirt swished with every tentative step I took, it was all so profoundly other. I felt ridiculous, exposed, my masculine frame feeling awkward and out of place in such feminine attire. I stumbled, nearly tripping over the long hem, my face burning with embarrassment. "Stand straight," Maeve instructed, adjusting a sleeve. "Speak softly. Lower your voice. Imagine you are a flower, delicate yet strong." Hours turned into days, days into weeks of relentless training. They taught me how to walk with a gentle sway, how to hold my head high, how to curtsy, how to smile demurely. My rough voice, accustomed to shouting over market vendors, had to be softened, modulated into a melodic timbre. I learned about court etiquette, about noble titles, about the history of the royal family, details I absorbed with a detached fascination. Every morning, I would wake with a knot of dread in my stomach, knowing I had to face the mirror and transform into someone I wasn't. I hated it at first. The dresses felt like shackles, the gentle mannerisms like a performance I could never truly master. My body felt alien and my mind screamed in protest. Every time I caught my reflection, I saw a stranger, a caricature of a princess. The shame was a constant companion, hot and prickly on my skin. Yet, amidst the discomfort and the forced transformation, a peculiar sensation began to stir within me. It started subtly, a faint whisper in the background of my turmoil. Sometimes, when the heavy silks draped just right, or when my instructor praised my progress in a curtsy, a strange, almost imperceptible ease would wash over me. It was fleeting, easily dismissed as a trick of the mind, a desperate attempt to cope with my new reality. But it grew. Slowly, insidiously, this feeling of rightness began to assert itself. When I spoke in the higher, softer tone they demanded, it felt not entirely unnatural. When I learned to move with the grace of a woman, there was a fluidness that, surprisingly, felt good. There were moments, brief and startling, when I would look into the polished silver mirror, a gift from Maeve for practicing your royal demeanor, and, for a split second, the stranger looking back at me would not feel so strange anymore. "You don't recognize the person in the mirror anymore, do you?" I'd whisper to myself, my voice still trembling. And sometimes, in those fleeting moments, the person in the mirror would subtly, almost imperceptibly, smile back. It was a smile I hadn't seen on my own face in years, a smile that held a nascent glimmer of peace. It was confusing, terrifying, and yet strangely comforting. It was as if a dormant part of me, a long-forgotten memory, was slowly, tentatively waking up. The more I became Lyra, the more Aiden seemed to recede, not just from the perception of others, but from my own inner landscape. I found myself wondering, in the dead of night, wrapped in unfamiliar finery, if perhaps this masquerade wasn't just a burden, but a revelation. Was I merely a boy in a dress, or was I something else, something more complex, something that had always been waiting for the right moment to emerge? The lines blurred, and the world I knew, the world of Aiden, began to fade into a dream, replaced by the vivid, terrifying, yet strangely compelling reality of Lyra. The day arrived with a mixture of dread and a surreal sense of inevitability. I, Aiden, the orphan boy, was about to step into the role of Princess Lyra. The plan of the Crows was bold, bordering on insane, but their conviction, and my resemblance to the lost princess, was potent enough to sway their followers. They dressed me in a gown of shimmering moon-silver silk, my hair styled with intricate braids and adorned with pearls. A touch of rouge on my cheeks, a whisper of kohl around my eyes, and when I looked in the mirror, it wasn't Aiden looking back. It was indeed a princess, poised and regal. The transformation was complete. I was presented to the royal court as the long-lost Princess Lyra, miraculously found after 15 years. The grand hall, usually filled with whispers and the rustle of expensive fabrics, fell silent as I entered, escorted by Maeve and a retinue of the Crows, members masquerading as loyal servants. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs, threatening to betray my carefully constructed composure. Every step was a tightrope walk between panic and performance. Then I saw her, Queen Isolde. Her face, etched with years of sorrow and longing, was a portrait of fragile hope. Her eyes, the same shade of deep violet as my own, widened as she looked at me. A gasp escaped her lips and then a heart-wrenching sob. She rushed forward, her royal bearing forgotten, tears streaming down her face. She embraced me fiercely, a mother's desperate embrace, burying her face in my shoulder. "My daughter, my Lyra," she choked out, her voice thick with emotion. "You have your father's eyes and your mother's voice." My breath hitched. I hadn't anticipated such raw emotion. I had practiced my lines, my expressions, but no amount of rehearsal could prepare me for the genuine grief and overwhelming love radiating from her. Her words about my voice sent a strange shiver down my spine. The lullaby, the faint whisper I sometimes heard in the depths of my dreams, echoed in my memory. Was it her voice? A part of me, the Aiden part, wanted to confess, to scream that this was all a lie, but the Lyra part, the part that was now so deeply ingrained, held me silent. I returned her embrace, a hesitant, almost instinctual gesture, and found a strange, unexpected comfort in her arms. The court, initially skeptical, seemed to sway under the weight of the Queen's conviction. Whispers of a miracle spread like wildfire. The resemblance was undeniable, the Queen's tearful reunion too genuine to be faked. Even the most cynical courtiers began to believe. Among them, I noticed a figure standing tall and unmoving, a sentinel of quiet strength. This was Saren, captain of the Royal Guard. He was a warrior, his frame powerful, his face ruggedly handsome with eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He observed me with an intensity that made my carefully schooled smile falter. His gaze was not one of adoration or sentimentality, but of keen, almost clinical assessment. He was a watchful hawk, scrutinizing every movement, every subtle nuance. Queen Isolde, ever cautious despite her joy, immediately assigned Saren as my personal protector. "Captain Saren will ensure your safety, my dear," she announced, her voice still trembling with emotion. "He is the finest warrior in the kingdom, utterly loyal." Saren simply bowed, a stiff, formal gesture, his eyes never leaving mine. I felt a prickle of unease. He was too perceptive, too observant. I knew, instinctively, that he would be the hardest one to fool. Life in the palace was a dizzying whirlwind of new experiences. Elaborate banquets, where I had to master the delicate art of using an array of silver cutlery, endless lessons in history, diplomacy, and courtly dances, conversations filled with veiled threats and subtle manipulations. I was constantly on guard, every word, every gesture a carefully constructed facade. The whispers followed me like shadows. Some spoke of divine intervention, of a princess returned to save her people. Others, the more cynical, murmured about a convenient impostor, a tool for political gain. I learned quickly to navigate this treacherous landscape, to smile when I felt like screaming, to nod sagely when I barely understood the machinations being discussed. Saren was a constant, formidable presence. He shadowed my every step, his silent vigilance both comforting and unnerving. He would stand at the periphery of my private chambers, accompany me on my strolls through the royal gardens, and sit with unshakable stillness during my lessons. His loyalty to the queen was absolute, and I knew that if he ever suspected me, my masquerade would crumble. Yet, as days turned into weeks, a subtle shift began to occur in his demeanor. His initial suspicion, though never entirely gone, began to soften. He would offer quiet advice during my lessons, gently correcting my posture or reminding me of a forgotten protocol. He'd point out hidden pathways in the sprawling gardens, or share a rare, genuine smile when I managed to perform a complicated dance step without tripping. I started to notice things about him too. The way his hand would instinctively reach for his sword hilt when a sudden noise startled me, the subtle flicker of concern in his eyes when I looked tired or overwhelmed, the deep, resonant timbre of his voice when he spoke of duty and honor. He was a man of few words, but his presence was a reassuring anchor in the sea of courtly deceit. During one particularly elaborate ball, a political rival attempted to corner me, her words dripping with poisoned flattery. Before I could fully grasp her intentions, Saren stepped in, his voice calm but firm, deflecting her with a diplomatic grace I hadn't expected from a warrior. He had protected me, not just from physical threats, but from the more insidious dangers of the court. Afterward, as we walked back to my chambers through dimly lit corridors, he surprised me by speaking, his voice lower than usual. "You handled yourself well, princess. You have a keen wit." My heart fluttered. His compliment, simple as it was, meant more than any fawning praise from the courtiers. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not just a stoic guardian, but a man of integrity, a man who saw past the facade I so desperately maintained. A warmth spread through me, a feeling I hadn't felt in years, perhaps never before. And then, the most startling realization began to creep into my mind. I was playing a role, yes, but the more I inhabited Lyra, the more it felt natural. When the queen called me my daughter, when the servants addressed me as Your Royal Highness, when Saren called me princess, it no longer felt like a lie I was telling, but a truth I was slowly, inevitably embracing. The fear of discovery still lingered, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was now overshadowed by a different, more profound feeling. Perhaps I'd whisper to myself in the quiet solitude of my vast chambers, staring at my reflection in a gilded mirror, the Lyra in the glass looking back with a newfound serenity. Perhaps I truly am Lyra. The line between Aiden and Lyra was not just blurred, it was dissolving, leaving behind a new, composite identity, one that felt increasingly authentic. Life in the palace, once a terrifying masquerade, began to transform into something more. I was still acting, yes, but the role of Lyra was fitting me like a second skin. The courtly dances, the diplomatic conversations, the gentle greetings, they no longer felt entirely alien. The whispers about my return continued, but now a genuine sense of hope seemed to cling to them. The people of the kingdom, burdened by years of unrest and uncertainty, embraced the idea of a lost princess returned, a symbol of a better future. My days were meticulously planned, filled with duties befitting a royal heir. One afternoon, seeking a brief respite from the endless meetings and lessons, I ventured into the vast, ancient royal library. It was a place of quiet grandeur, towering shelves filled with leather-bound tomes, their pages whispering secrets of forgotten ages. The scent of old paper and dust filled the air, a comforting aroma compared to the heavy perfumes of the court. I wandered aimlessly, my fingers tracing the spines of books on history, philosophy, and arcane lore. My eyes caught upon a particular volume, its cover adorned with a delicate silver crescent moon. Intrigued, I pulled it from its shelf. It was a collection of ancient legends and fairy tales, passed down through generations of the royal family. As I turned the brittle pages, a particular illustration caught my eye, rendered in exquisite detail. It was a painting titled The Moon's Daughter. It depicted a tiny baby cradled in what looked like a silken blanket, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. And there, clearly visible on the baby's shoulder, was a distinct, star-shaped birthmark. My breath hitched. A jolt, sharp and visceral, shot through me. The image was hauntingly familiar. My mind, usually so disciplined in its maintenance of the Lyra persona, suddenly flooded with fragmented, ethereal memories. A soft, warm light. A gentle rocking. The faint echo of a woman's voice, singing a lullaby, the words indistinct, but the melody achingly familiar. Du kan la ai on trang van se tim the kan. No matter who you are, the moonlight will find you. The voice I sometimes heard in my dreams. My hand instinctively went to my own shoulder, to the place where the star-shaped birthmark was depicted. I had no such mark, of course. My transformation into Aiden had erased it, or perhaps merely hidden it. But the sense of recognition was overwhelming, deeply unsettling, and yet profoundly significant. It was as if a missing piece of a puzzle long lost had suddenly appeared. From that moment on, the whispers in my subconscious grew louder. The lullaby no longer a faint echo, but a clearer melody. I found myself humming it unknowingly, catching myself just as the full tune was about to emerge. The more I delved into the history of the kingdom, the more I heard tales of Princess Lyra, the lost Moon's daughter, and the prophecy surrounding her birth. Each tale, each passing mention, resonated within me, shaking the carefully constructed foundations of my assumed identity. I began to pay closer attention to myself. My voice, which I had so meticulously trained to be soft and melodic, now felt utterly natural. My movements, once stiff and self-conscious in feminine attire, were now fluid, graceful, almost innate. There was a confidence in my bearing, a natural elegance that had nothing to do with performance. It was as if my true self, suppressed for so long, was finally finding its true expression through the vessel of Lyra. My mind, my heart, my very soul seemed to be aligning with this female identity. The boy Aiden felt like a distant, fading dream, a costume I had once worn, but no longer fit. The palace itself seemed to respond to my presence. During a tour of the royal treasury, a crown, intricately designed with crescent moons and stars, shimmered with an unusual brilliance as I approached it. In my private chambers, a large, antique silver mirror, usually dull and clouded with age, seemed to gain a new polish, reflecting my image with startling clarity. Once, during a visit to the temple of the moon goddess, a beautiful, ancient statue of the deity, which had stood silent and unmoving for centuries, seemed to glow faintly as I knelt before it, offering a silent prayer. These were not mere coincidences. They were signs, subtle yet undeniable, that something profound was stirring within me and within the very fabric of the magic around me. The internal conflict that had once defined me began to subside, replaced by a strange sense of peace, albeit one tinged with a deep, existential confusion. I no longer know what is false, what is real, I would confess to Saren, during one of our quiet conversations in the royal garden. He had become my confidant, the one person in the court I felt I could truly speak to, even if I couldn't reveal the whole truth. I only know that when people call me Lyra, my heart trembles. He would listen, his gaze steady, his expression unreadable, but I sensed his understanding, his quiet acceptance. He never pushed, never questioned, simply listened, a pillar of strength and silent support. His presence made the unraveling of my identity less terrifying, more like a journey of discovery. The boy Aiden, the orphan from the slums, was a ghost. The Princess Lyra, the true heir, was emerging. The lines were not just blurred, they were dissolving, revealing a truth that was both terrifying and incredibly liberating. I was not just playing a role, I was becoming. I was rediscovering. I was remembering a part of myself that had been lost, hidden, waiting for the moonlight to find it once more. The fragile piece I had found in my emerging identity was shattered abruptly. My carefully constructed world, built on a foundation of half-truths and growing self-discovery, threatened to collapse under the weight of betrayal. One evening, as I was returning from a late meeting with the Queen, Saren intercepted me in a dimly lit corridor. His face was grim, his eyes, usually so composed, now held a fierce urgency. "Princess," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "we have a problem. A grave one." My heart instantly leaped into my throat. I knew, instinctively, that this wasn't about a courtly intrigue or a diplomatic spat. This was something far more dangerous. He led me to a secluded antechamber, locking the door behind us. "Corin," he began, his voice laced with disgust. Corin was one of the crows who had first discovered me, a smooth-talking, ambitious man who had always made me uneasy. "He's been selling information. Not just about the rebellion, but about you." My blood ran cold. "What kind of information?" Saren's jaw tightened. "He's been whispering to the royal council, to certain powerful nobles. He's planning to reveal that you are an imposter. A boy, disguised as the Princess Lyra, put in place by the crows to usurp the throne." The air was sucked from my lungs. The fear I had suppressed for so long, the constant dread of exposure, now exploded within me. My masquerade, the very thing that had allowed me to discover my true self, was about to be violently torn apart. Not only would my life be in danger, but the fragile peace that had begun to blossom between the royal family and the people, buoyed by the hope of Lyra's return, would be utterly destroyed. "He plans to make his move tonight," Saren continued, his eyes meeting mine, firm and unwavering. "He's gathered enough evidence and witnesses, disgruntled members of the crows who feel they haven't been rewarded enough. They plan to expose you during the midnight council meeting." Panic threatened to overwhelm me. "What do we do?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "We leave," Saren stated simply, already moving towards a hidden exit I hadn't known existed. "Now. There's no time to explain, no time to fight. We must get you out of the palace before they can act." There was no hesitation in his voice, no doubt in his eyes. He didn't question whether I was truly Lyra or Aiden. He simply reacted, his loyalty unwavering, his sole focus on protecting me. In that moment, he wasn't just my guard. He was my rescuer, my anchor in a rapidly sinking world. He quickly helped me change into simpler, more practical clothing, a dark tunic and breeches, far different from the elegant gowns I had become accustomed to, but surprisingly, they felt right, a return to a practicality I hadn't realized I missed. He handed me a small pouch of coins and a sharp dagger, his gaze serious. "You might need this." We slipped through the hidden passages of the palace, moving like ghosts through the moonlit corridors. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking danger, every distant sound a potential pursuer. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm, a constant reminder of the imminent threat. We climbed down a forgotten service stairwell, through dusty cellars, and finally emerged into the cool night air outside the palace walls, melting into the shadows of the royal gardens. The city slept, oblivious to the drama unfolding within its grandest edifice. We moved quickly, silently, through winding alleyways, avoiding the main thoroughfares. Soon, the familiar stench of the slums, a smell I had once called home, filled the air. But we didn't stop there. Saren led us past the familiar haunts of my childhood, past the crowded markets and crumbling tenements, towards the outer gates of the city. The journey was a harrowing blur of desperate flight. We traveled through dense forests, their ancient trees whispering secrets in the wind, their shadows providing cover from the relentless pursuit of royal guards, now undoubtedly alerted to my escape, and the vengeful crows, furious at my absence. Saren was a formidable guide, his knowledge of the wilderness astonishing. He tracked silently, read the signs of the forest, and found safe havens in the deepest thickets. During those days and nights on the run, stripped of all pretense and luxury, our relationship deepened in ways I could never have imagined. Saren, usually so reserved, began to reveal glimpses of the man beneath the armor. He would share his meager rations with me, offer his cloak against the biting night chill, and tend to my scraped knees and weary feet with a gentle hand. I, in turn, found a strength I hadn't known I possessed. I learned to run for miles, to climb steep embankments, to endure hunger and thirst. The soft-spoken princess was replaced by a tenacious survivor, resourceful and resilient. Saren witnessed this transformation, not just the physical endurance, but the fierce spirit that burned within me. He saw my courage when we narrowly escaped a patrol, my compassion when I insisted we share our last piece of bread with a starving child we encountered, my quiet determination to keep moving forward despite the fear. He began to look at me differently. The respectful distance in his eyes was replaced by a profound admiration, a growing tenderness. Our conversations, often limited to survival necessities, sometimes drifted to deeper topics. He spoke of his childhood, his hopes for the kingdom, his unwavering belief in justice. And I, in turn, found myself speaking not as the Princess Lyra of court, but as the raw, unadorned self that was emerging. I spoke of the confusion, the strange pull towards this feminine identity, the haunting lullaby, the star mark in the ancient book. He listened, always, with an open heart. One evening, huddled beneath a canopy of ancient oaks, a cold drizzle falling around us, he looked at me, his eyes softening in the dim light of our small fire. "Lyra," he said, his voice a low rumble, "you are the most courageous person I have ever known." My heart, already tender from our shared trials, swelled with a warmth that chased away the chill of the night. His use of the name Lyra felt utterly natural, more real than ever before. In the crucible of our escape, the last vestiges of Aiden seemed to burn away, leaving only Lyra. I wasn't pretending to be a girl anymore. I was a girl. My spirit, my essence, had shifted and settled, finding its true home in this identity. The discovery was no longer a confusion, but a profound, undeniable truth. And Saren, the stoic warrior, had seen it happen, had witnessed my true self bloom. As we continued our desperate journey, a bond, forged in danger and mutual respect, grew between us. It wasn't just admiration, it was love, blossoming quietly and fiercely in the heart of the enchanted, dangerous wilderness. Our desperate flight led us deeper into the uncharted territories of the kingdom, away from the pursuing guards and the vengeful crows. Saren, with his innate sense of direction and knowledge of ancient paths, led us towards a destination he spoke of with hushed reverence, the sanctuary of the Silver Moon. It was a place whispered about in legends, a sacred site where ancient magic was said to still reside, a place of profound revelations. The journey was arduous. We battled against the elements, faced down wild beasts, and narrowly evaded patrols. But through it all, our bond grew stronger, forged in the crucible of shared danger and nascent love. I, Lyra, no longer thought of myself as Aiden. That chapter felt like a distant dream, a forgotten identity. This was my truth, this fierce, resilient woman journeying with the man she had come to love. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we arrived. The sanctuary of the Silver Moon was not a grand temple, but a collection of ancient, moss-covered stone monoliths, arranged in a perfect circle atop a desolate, windswept hill. In the center, a single, gnarled ancient tree stood, its branches reaching towards the heavens like grasping fingers. The air here hummed with an almost palpable energy, a sense of immense antiquity and dormant power. As we stepped into the sacred circle, a figure emerged from the shadows of the ancient tree. He was an old man, frail, but with eyes that sparkled with an unnerving intensity, like ancient stars. His robes were simple, woven from rough fibers, but his presence exuded an aura of profound wisdom and immense magical power. It was Arian, the royal sorcerer, the very man who had cast the Moonveil spell upon me all those years ago. He looked at me, his eyes piercing through my earthly form, directly into my soul. A faint, knowing smile touched his lips. "The moonlight has indeed found you, my dear," he said, his voice surprisingly strong, yet gentle. "And it has brought you home." Saren, ever protective, moved to shield me, his hand instinctively on his sword hilt. But Arian simply raised a hand, a gesture of peace. "Fear not, young warrior. Your princess is safe here, and her truth is about to be revealed." He explained everything. The Moonveil spell, cast to protect me from the traitor, had been intricately linked to the phases of the moon. It was designed to slowly weaken over time, especially when my true nature began to assert itself. The journey, the love, the self-discovery, it had all hastened the process. Tonight, Arian proclaimed, his voice resonating with ancient power, under the zenith of the prophetic full moon, the spell will finally unravel. He led me to the center of the stone circle, where a shallow basin filled with clear spring water reflected the sky. "Look into the water, child of the moon," he instructed. "Embrace who you truly are." I gazed into the basin. The water, usually still, began to ripple faintly, reflecting the rising full moon. The moonlight, pure and incandescent, streamed down, bathing the entire sanctuary in an otherworldly glow. Saren stood beside me, his hand gently finding mine, his presence a comforting warmth amidst the swirling magic. As the moon reached its highest point, its light seemed to condense, pouring into the basin, swirling around my reflection. I felt a tingling sensation, starting from my fingertips and spreading throughout my entire being. It wasn't painful, but intensely profound, as if every cell in my body was being awakened, rearranged, remembered. My reflection in the water began to shift. The boyish angles of my face softened, becoming more delicate, more truly feminine. My shoulders, once broad, seemed to subtly narrow, my frame becoming more slender. The subtle changes I had observed in myself over the past weeks now intensified, accelerating. I watched, mesmerized, as the last vestiges of Aiden, the form I had worn for 15 years, melted away like mist. My light hair seemed to gleam even brighter, shimmering with an ethereal quality. And then, as the transformation reached its crescendo, a familiar, star-shaped mark began to emerge on my left shoulder, glowing faintly under the moonlight before settling into a subtle, permanent birthmark. The star, the ancient prophecy, my true identity, it was all there, undeniable. The spell had finally dissolved. Aiden was gone. Lyra, the true princess, stood revealed. A wave of memories, vivid and overwhelming, crashed over me. Fragments of my infancy, my mother's face, tear-streaked yet radiant with love, the warmth of her arms, the soft brush of silk, the lullaby, now clear and distinct in my mind. The terror of the assassin, the flash of magic, Arian's chanting, the fear in my mother's eyes. It all flooded back, a torrent of lost years and forgotten truths. Tears streamed down my face, not of sorrow, but of profound, overwhelming release. They were tears of joy, of remembrance, of finding a piece of my soul I hadn't known was missing. I wasn't losing myself, I was finding myself, finally, completely. I didn't lose myself, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, but undeniably Lyra's. I found myself again. Saren, who had witnessed the entire, breathtaking transformation, simply knelt before me, his eyes filled with a mixture of awe, reverence, and an even deeper love. He didn't speak, but his gaze conveyed everything. He had loved Aiden, the boy. He loved Lyra, the princess. And now he loved Lyra, the true woman, unveiled and whole. The moonlight, indeed, had found me. The journey back to the capital was filled with a newfound sense of purpose and an undeniable truth. Saren and I, now joined by the venerable Arian, moved with a quiet determination. The disguise was gone, the magic veil lifted. I was Lyra, the lost princess, no longer a masquerade, but a living, breathing reality. The star-shaped birthmark on my shoulder, once a forgotten prophecy, was now a visible emblem of my destiny. As we approached the city gates, word of my true identity, corroborated by Arian's undeniable presence and magic, had already begun to precede us. Whispers turned to gasps, gasps to shouts of disbelief, then to cries of joyous recognition. The people, who had embraced me as a symbol, now saw me as their true hope, miraculously returned. The story of my transformation, of the Moonveil spell, spread like wildfire, adding a mystical aura to my return. Our entry into the royal palace was a stark contrast to my first, clandestine arrival. This time, it was a triumphant procession. The guards, who had once pursued us, now knelt, their faces awestruck. The courtiers, who had once whispered doubts, now bowed in deference, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. Queen Isolde, my mother, was waiting in the grand throne room, her face pale, but her eyes blazing with an intensity one now understood. When she saw me, truly saw me, no longer as the boy she had mourned or the girl she had tentatively embraced, but as her daughter, her Lyra, her composure utterly broke. She rushed towards me, her regal robes forgotten, her arms outstretched. "My daughter," she cried, her voice choked with tears. "My beautiful Lyra." I met her embrace, this time not with hesitation, but with the full, unfiltered love of a child finally reunited with her mother. All the memories, the stolen years, the longing poured into that embrace. She touched the star mark on my shoulder, her fingers trembling, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. "The star, it is truly you," she wept, her voice a fragile whisper of relief and overwhelming joy. "My Lyra, you are truly home." It was a moment of profound healing, 15 years of separation erased in a single, tearful reunion. The court was in an uproar. The revelation of my true identity sent shockwaves through the kingdom. The traitor who had orchestrated my assassination and the current unrest, his name later revealed to be Lord Valerius, was swiftly apprehended and tried. The Crows, the rebel faction, initially wary and confused, were now faced with an undeniable truth. Their fake princess was, in fact, the real one. Maeve, who had led the Crows and chosen me, looked at me with a complex mix of surprise, pride, and a touch of awe. Her plan, inadvertently, had led to the true heir's return. The old political divides, the animosity between the royalists and the rebels, began to soften. Both factions, in their own way, had believed in the people's princess, albeit for different reasons. Now, with the undeniable return of the true Lyra, a unifying force had emerged. The queen, weary from years of grief and political struggle, found renewed strength in my return and began to work towards a true reconciliation. Saren stood by my side throughout this tumultuous period, a silent, unwavering presence. After the initial flurry of reunion and revelation, he knelt before me, his eyes earnest, his expression a mixture of profound respect and something deeper, something intensely personal. "Princess," he began, his voice a low, rough rumble. "My queen. I do not know what to call you now. You were Aiden, then Lyra, and now you are more than either." He was struggling with the shift, the profound change in the person he had come to love. The boy he had once protected, the princess he had come to admire, had now fully merged into a being more complex, more powerful, and utterly his own. I reached out, taking his strong, calloused hand in mine. My touch was soft, reassuring. I looked into his eyes, conveying all the love and gratitude that had blossomed between us during our desperate flight. "You may call me Lyra," I said, my voice clear and steady, infused with the newfound authority of my true self. "For that is who I am." "But know this, Saren," I continued, my gaze unwavering, "I am Lyra, the one who was once Aiden. And both are real. Both experiences, both identities, have shaped me into who I am today. The boy from the slums and the princess of prophecy are inextricably linked. They are both parts of my truth." His eyes softened, a profound understanding dawning within them. He squeezed my hand gently, a silent promise of unwavering devotion. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges of governance and peacemaking, but with Saren by my side, I felt ready to face anything. My coronation was not just a ceremony, it was a testament to a new era. I did not simply ascend to the throne as Princess Lyra, the rediscovered heir. I broke tradition, declaring myself Queen of Moonlight and Shadow. The title was a deliberate choice, a symbolic acknowledgement of my dual existence, of the boy Aiden who lived in the shadows and the princess Lyra who was illuminated by the moon. It was a declaration that my past, my journey, had not been erased, but embraced, forming the very essence of my reign. My reign began with the daunting task of healing a fractured kingdom. The lessons I learned as Aiden, the orphan boy, proved invaluable. I understood the plight of the common folk, their struggles, their hopes, their deep-seated grievances. I remembered the hunger, the cold, the feeling of invisibility. This perspective, combined with the innate wisdom and diplomatic training I had received as Lyra, allowed me to bridge the vast chasm between the nobility and the commoners. I initiated reforms, not just from the throne, but from the streets. I established councils where common folk had a voice, not just the nobles. I invested in infrastructure that benefited everyone, not just the wealthy. I sought out justice for the wronged, not just those with power. My decisions were guided by the raw empathy I gained as Aiden and the strategic intellect I cultivated as Lyra. I was a queen who understood both palaces and alleyways, a ruler who could speak the language of both power and poverty. Saren remained my steadfast companion, my most trusted advisor, and the quiet strength beside me. He stood as my protector, not just of my person, but of my ideals. Our love, born in the wilderness and tempered by revelation, grew deeper with each passing day. He was the unwavering anchor in the turbulent seas of politics, the steady hand in the face of adversity. He learned to navigate the nuances of courtly intrigue while retaining his warrior's honesty, offering me counsel that was both wise and true. He was my confidant, my lover, and the one person who saw all facets of my being, embracing both the moonlight and the shadow within me. Years passed. The kingdom flourished under my reign, growing into a beacon of unity and prosperity. The prophecies that once spoke of peace or ruin had found their resolution in a peace forged from understanding and courage. On a quiet night, under a sky studded with 1,000,000 stars and a benevolent full moon, I found myself in my private chambers. I stood before a grand, ornate mirror, a relic that had been in the royal family for centuries. I looked at my reflection, a woman now mature and regal, her eyes holding the wisdom of years and the fire of a just ruler. The star-shaped birthmark, usually hidden by my gowns, was a subtle, beautiful testament to my journey. I smiled. It was a complete smile, full of peace and self-acceptance. In that reflection, I no longer saw Aiden or Lyra as separate entities. They were one, seamlessly woven into the tapestry of my being. The boy who had once hated the dresses and the princess who had slowly embraced them had merged into a powerful, compassionate queen. The faint lullaby, my mother's voice, which had once been a ghostly whisper, now played clearly in my heart, a melody of love and belonging. No matter who you are, the moonlight will find you. And it had. It had illuminated my path, revealed my truth, and led me to myself. I turned from the mirror, a sense of profound contentment washing over me. Saren was waiting for me, his strong arms ready to embrace. Our story, like life itself, continued to unfold, an ongoing tapestry woven with love, leadership, and the enduring power of finding one's true self.